Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? Well, I had a good time last night running Uncharted Worlds for the second time. And this video is not about Uncharted Worlds. It's not about Powered by the Apocalypse. But that's what we did last night. And so I got to run a second session of our Big Trouble in Alpha Centauri, I'm not going to recall the campaign, but just a string of sessions. And, Chalice and Chains, Sam, was a player in that, and Jason, Dark Age of Roleplay Games, another player, and our friend Eloy, who does not have a YouTube channel, which is really sad because Eloy makes some great Facebook Live videos, so he should have a YouTube channel. And so, three great players had a great time. Did we play it exactly rules as written? No, we didn't, and that was part of my intention, is to try to see, if I bent a few things. Have we ever really played it completely Powered by the Apocalypse rules as written? Probably not. But that's not the point of this video. As we're talking about it afterwards, at the end, probably the 2 hour and some odd mark, we start actually maybe talking for another 20 minutes after the session ended about how this game felt, about how it felt compared to things like Fantasy Flight games, Star Wars, the mechanics of it, how that felt compared to like an old school D20 mechanic, that sort of thing. Interesting conversation, actually. I think I wanted to cut that off and just make that a video by itself because I thought that conversation was actually pretty cool. However, this video is not about that either. But we start talking about my intention, where I said, well, I would love to see if we could play these characters, including my GM NPC character, because I'd love to have somebody else maybe take over the reins and put their character kind of in the background. I'd love to play it with different systems, play it with something like Genesis, play it with something like maybe OSR, like a White Star or something like that. Maybe play it with Fate, whatever it might be. We could try, do these characters, does this whole scenario feel different with different people, or different systems rather. So we're not really sure as a group whether we want to continue to do that, whether we want to invest that much time. And so I made a comment about that, which had me thinking for the rest of the day. And it's been my experience lately. I've been incredibly fortunate to run across a lot of great role players online and develop relationships with people online. And we've tried out a lot of games, and which is also a blast. I'm having a lot of fun in the groups I'm involved in, checking out, Hollow Earth Expedition, checking out Leagues of Gothic Horror, checking out Fantasy Flight games, Star Wars, checking out, hopefully the Genesis engine that, this kind of, Star Wars with the serial numbers filed off, checking out Star Trek, Star Trek Adventures, the Modifius 2D20, etc. The list goes on and on. Running games of basic fantasy role-playing game, playing in them, running some Lamentations of the Flame Princess, etc. And we've been exposing each other to a lot of different games, trying a whole bunch of stuff together. Lots and lots of fun. But part of what's happened with that is we're playing like miniature, maybe 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 session campaigns, if you will. And often what we're doing is we're playing a lot of one-shots. Maybe we play, a second time like we did last night. And sometimes, to me, what happens, especially with the one-shots, the shorter things where there's really not a commitment, is it feels often like, reading the first chapter or 2 chapters of a book, really starting to get into it, and then putting that book back on the shelf and maybe never reading it again. And it can be a little heartbreaking at times because, especially if you play with really good players, you start to get really interested in these characters. You start to get really interested in the emerging story, for lack of a better word. You start to get really interested in the premise. I wonder what's going to happen next. And it's like, having a TV show canceled. It runs for that one season and then boom, it's done. Or like reading those chapters in a book where it can just be kind of heartbreaking. Like, I wish we had the opportunity to find out what happened next. But often, not everybody that you play with has the same idea. They want to go on to something else. Which is fine. And we've got a chance to explore a lot of different games that way. But oftentimes, I find myself, wishing, especially with the ones that really grab my fancy, I wish we could play this again. I wish we could continue to find out what happens. And it's okay, by me, whether we put it on the back burner for a while. I mean, heck, our All for One Regime League campaign I've been involved in for over a year now, we play very infrequently because our schedules don't always allow it. We're still, kind of waiting to play the Veil again when our schedules allow that too, because we have 6 more sessions. 3 of them are ones that I have to run. Those are the next ones up, etc. And we're going to start hopefully the Lamentations and Prussia game again. So we've got things. I'm used to having things that are on the back burner for a while. I'm okay with that. But sometimes it can be really sad when you play a really engaging, a really compelling one-shot. And it's not a one-shot or a 2-shot or whatever you want to call it that has a real defined beginning, middle, and end. Not so much like there are Leagues of Gothic Horror impromptu or semi-impromptu one-shot that Anthony ran for me and a couple other fellas. where it did, it faded to black and it had a very defined end. There's not too much else going to be happening with these characters, and it was very obvious why. But in other games that I've ran, that I've played in recently, I often find myself thinking every once in a while, gee, I'd really like to get back to that. I'd really like to find out what happens here. And so, like I said, it can be sometimes a little heartbreaking to know that you may never get to that, or that not everybody shares that interest. So, just figured I'd share that with you. Have you had experience with things like that? What do you think about all this? Have a good one, kids.